Move that microphone, guys.
Yeah, we don't need it today.
Okay. So everybody can hear me okay? Yes,
They're getting thumbs up.
thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay, this is wonderful. I'm very happy today because I have been studying my book, and not just studying, but I've been reflecting, and I've been examining. You know, the greatest joy comes from self-examination, and when we give me the offerings, a book that has the offerings in it. When we do our opening.
Oh, yeah, I can, do you want to see the electronic copy? I can show you that. right
Sure. Can we? I'd like to start with
Oh,
it
sure.
this morning. So we're having a little oral quiz today to see how we are doing.
Can you see that?
Thank you. And this won't go off, right?
As long as you keep your finger on it.
Okay. All right, so let's start today with the incense offering, and then we'll do the 3 groups of purifying precepts. And we'll do God's on opening the secrets as well. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. All auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. Well, I think we'll also do the praise to our teacher and to Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Disam. Let's do. Let's do Namo Disam Sherto. Seven times, because I'm in deep gratitude today for his instruction in correcting us to move from being so much. And you know, we think we're not that much in the head because we're always talking about mindfulness people and how to be happy, learning how to be happy with their things and all of that, you know. But on every level, you know, we need to not so much look at what others do, but really look at what we are doing. And we can always see room for improvement if we're focusing right here. So I'm so happy that he has given us an opportunity to turn right here for some intensive time of practice, and how much it is benefiting us, and especially when we go through, we won't do this. when the screen keeps closing, especially when we're going through something, and we can use every opportunity for every experience we have, whether it's a good experience or it's not a not good experience. We can find something to be grateful about, because we can use those times to practice. And sometimes when we're going through more difficult times is when we can make the most progress. We can tend to get complacent when things are going well for us, and we start thinking, oh yeah, we know, and oh yeah, I remember. But we are forgetful creatures, and we easily, quickly forget and slide off the path, thinking we're on the path because we know what the path is. And so it takes a certain kind of diligence and a certain kind of radical honesty, of fearless courage to continually look at and examine yourself and your life and your thoughts and your words and your actions, and see how well they actually line up to your great ideal. And you may find that your ideal needs a little bumping up. You know, if you're always meeting it, then maybe we need to add something to our practice that encourages us to step higher in our virtue and in our capacity, and that ultimately that relates to our accomplishment in the world. And so, so I just want to offer we repeated 7 times, giving honor to our teacher for the direction that he's pointing us in. And, you know, the teacher points a direction, we have to actually go that distance. We have to walk it ourselves. And I can see how we are increasing in our stamina, in our interest, in our drive and aspiration for attainment. And I see the fruit that's coming. And I have so many conversations with the members of the Sangha, and how it's like everybody's doing the work, whether they're here, whether they're not here. And it's so delightful, especially with Panyadeepa perhaps coming up to the end of his life, because I tell him everything that you all tell me. Unlike him, when you all have a conversation with him, he never tells me what is. I'm like, how can I help if I don't know things? But that's his way. My way is I share everything with him as a co-teacher, and it brings him great joy at this time to see you are able to hold your own and to continue to move forward. Namo Disam. Namo Disam. Namo Disam. Namo Disam. Namo Disam. Namo Disam. Sometimes I think just hearing his name brings me such joy. And that's what I want to talk about today. So true to form, you know how I like just keep looping back, because that's how life is. You know, we read something, we think we got that, let's go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But it's about this looping back continually that we, Buddha Master has a way he calls it the seven Dharma method or something like that. But he says, like, you have to read something 7 times before you even begin to get it, you know, within your interior and begin to digest it and dissolve it. And so I'm going to loop back a little bit today, and you don't even have to loop back with me. I'm not sure if we all have the same books and everything's on the same page or not. So, so we're just going to kind of have a recap conversation. And don't get upset with me because I'm all the way back on page 2. But we are gonna continue and get to the book. Soma will see to that. But I want to make sure that we are like really seizing the essence of it, and we're learning how to put it in practice every day. So in chapter, actually, this is chapter 2, so I didn't go all the way back to chapter 1. In chapter 2, developing a clear intention is where I want to go, because the foundation is the most important part of a structure. And our spiritual foundation is the most important part of our spiritual path. And depending on how solid, how firm the foundation is, it determines how much we can build, how much weight can be laid on top of that foundation, how much we can accommodate, what we can go through, how we can penetrate through dullness and ignorance and actually have some clarity, how much we can encourage and arouse ourselves no matter what might be going on in the outer world. And that all depends on the kind of foundation we lay. So as we are aspiring bodhisattvas, Buddhas to be, that we need to make sure that we have a really, really strong foundation. Otherwise, it'll just be like a superficial building, but when the storms come or the rain comes, it will fall flat. And so I wanted to start with, it starts with the entrance to the Bodhisattva discipline. And I hold it a little different way, not thinking so much about discipline. Discipline is like when you just really learn it, thinking of like discipline, like has always meant boot camp to me. And I have had such an aversion to an enforced kind of training. I feel like training should be entreated. You should be delighted to undertake it. It should be something that you look forward to because, ooh, this is so delicious. Yeah, I learned that about myself. Or, it should be in that way that we undertake training with a certain kind of joy and a certain kind of running towards it. That's what I mean. Instead of being dragged along and every point of discipline is a cut to the body. But instead, it's like, okay, wait to see what we got to do next, what we have to learn tomorrow, what I have to put in practice next week. But and in this way, the path becomes a joy. No matter what you're going through, the path becomes a joy. It becomes a life, a living thing that brings something to us besides the suffering of samsara. And so even when you're approaching difficult times, if you have this kind of relationship with the Dharma is a friend that is actually closer than any sister or brother could be to you. And it lifts you, it holds you, it nurtures you, it encourages you, it corrects you. It's always there, in the Dharma, the Buddha said, good friends in the Dharma is the whole of spiritual life. But I declare to you that the Dharma itself is the friend that manifests in cultivated relationships, but it's that Dharma there, that Dharma wisdom, that Dharma compassion that emerges as a field that you and I play in. That's what gives joy to the path and gives joy to life, even a samsaric life. So I have everything really organized today. I have paper clips in descending order because I'm hopping all around. Sometimes the way it's laid out, linearly, is good, and I'm not passing a judgment on it at all. But sometimes it was good when I read it on page 2. But by the time I had read through page 15 and circled back to what I read on page 2, it took me someplace else entirely. It said something a lot more than what it said when I was just on page 2, because I have added the wisdom, from pages 3 through 15 to my arsenal. Now, when I dovetail back on page 2, it says so much more. So we have a way of getting hooked and caught up on words and what they have meant to us in the past. And that's a hindrance, it's a stumbling block. It's where one thing we have to uproot ourselves from if we really want to penetrate, you know, to the fullness of things, is not being so caught up on what words have meant to us in the past, even yesterday, even this morning, or even, you know, in reading a book, by the time you get to the end of the chapter, when you go back and read it, just having a little bit more information, that word has more breadth, it has more depth, it has more volume, it has, you know, it becomes more, and it can open up more to us. You know, when I say open up more, I speak as if that's something out here, but actually the opening up more, excuse me. The opening up more is really going to our core, going to our interior, our fundamental, essential nature, because it's all right there. And we're actually unpacking it rather than learning something out here and bringing that to us. And that if we can really grasp that, everything we discover, everything we uncover is something that's already known within the basis of our fundamental nature, then we will know where the real inquiry and the pursuit is. And it's not out here at all, you know, that it's completely interior. And so I'd like to talk about this definition of bodhicitta. And in the beginning, he just calls it a basic human wisdom that can drive away the sorrows of the world, a basic human wisdom, a certain way of knowing. Thank you. A certain way of knowing, a certain way of seeing things, a certain way of understanding things. So it takes us away from so much intellectual, academic kind of knowing to, I need the, to a kind of attitude, you know, as opposed to a knowing. It's like an attitude, it's a positioning, the way we position ourselves to, let's say if you're a lookout and you have to be watching out for the bad guys, right? You know, and you're on the lookout post, you're gonna position yourself in such a way that you can see far and you can see up close. You're gonna position yourself in such a way that it allows you to be vigilant and to see what's approaching from a distance. You wouldn't go and like just prop yourself up against the back of the fence and not look out for the enemy coming, but you would be facing it. Number one, you'd be facing it with courage, holding fast to your commitment, the commitment of your post. You'd be diligently watching for the safety and the protection and the perseverance of yourself, yes, and also those within your compound. And so for oneself and also for others. And our understanding of the Dharma has to be this way. It has to be, we're constantly like shifting our attitude around things, shifting our perspective, shifting and changing how we hold things, how we look at things. This is the subtlety, this is the fineness of the treading of the path, you know. So it's not whether you get an A on all the tests, you know, when you take the exam, it's whether you can really walk the walk in real life, and whether you can walk. Some people can walk the walk, but it is like a derelict kind of walk with no joy, no bliss, no no delight in walking the path. So sometimes we're doing things out of fear, and that's not exactly the kind of fear that is meant to be aroused. It is the kind of fear that's more like being circumspect, being vigilant, being watchful, because this might happen if you're not. It's not the kind of fear that scares us, frightens us, and we do things because we don't want the repercussion of the fear, although we don't, but it's having the wisdom to see, like, there's no need for that. I can just easily do this and everything will go well. And so if we can get that shift, then we start to take up the bodhisattva mind as opposed to the mind of maybe like a soldier or a warrior or someone who's in that kind of training where you have to condition the body and condition the mind. This is more of a letting, more of an allowing, as opposed to an enforcement. That's what I mean. Is everybody with me? Mm-hmm. And so this changes our whole relationship to the Dharma. Sometimes it's called the natural law of things, and law has a certain connotation to us. So I don't like to think of it as the natural law. I like to think of it as the natural, because that takes away some kind of sense of enforcement, some kind of sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Not repercussion, but retribution. Yeah, these are words that we have become accustomed to using, but we have to be very, very delicate with how we use them and make sure that while, yes, there is a result, there is a resulting fruit of things, and some of it can be really rough when it comes upon you, when that thing is coming back, that action, the fruit of that action is coming back. But we shouldn't think of it as punishment or retribution. We just think of it as the fruit, returning. It's like throwing out a boomerang, and it throws and it just comes back. That's it. It's not the boomerang came back out of retribution, And so when we're thinking about that, like anything we do, anything we say, anything we think, it's a boomerang, so we're sending it and it's going to swirl and swirl and it comes right back. What is it that you want to come back to you? And so that's the first thing, thinking about ourselves with enough compassion. What is it that I want to come back to me? How do I want it to come back to me? And once one has a very firm idea of what they would like to see come back to them, then one can begin to understand every human being feels this way. Even one who did something dirty to you feels that way. They feel that they want something to come back to them that is easy, that is kind, that is respectful, that is understanding, that is second chance, that is, And so how do we get ourselves, how do we cultivate and develop this kind of mind that becomes your go-to place? I mean, even to where it becomes your only go-to place, not your fourth or your fifth, but your first and only go-to place. And this practice, these kinds of disciplines that the holy beings are sharing with us, is to show how to make the mind that way. And so we know we have practices of loving kindness and compassion and altruistic joy and equanimity, and the kind of equanimity that is born for boundless generosity. Give me 5 seconds. You got to have a little sore throat. So he talks about this bodhicitta being a basic wisdom that drives away sorrow. Doesn't even say that it fixes all situations, so everything is hunky-dory. It just says it drives away the sorrow that comes with everything. And so that's where we begin. Yeah. And they talk about the importance of the direct experience, because these masters have mastered, master means have mastered something, right? So they've mastered, and can explain or share the oral teachings and the written teachings, but they also speak to the truth of direct experience, right? Straightforwardly, being with life. I won't use the word accepting life because I don't want our minds to run with everything is how it is, because that's not really the whole story. Most of how it is how we've set things up to be collectively. And so we're all suffering, right? Okay, so I don't mean acceptance in that sense, but I mean, but just relating to the truth of direct experience, approaching, encountering, meeting, and handling life, as they say, in an unedited way. We like everything to be scripted out. We like everything to be planned. We like to know what's happening, and that's how we create these concrete identities and these concrete things, these concrete programs, because we like to have everything within our control. That's the exact opposite of how one walks this path. And that's why we're getting into so much trouble in the West, because we're bringing it into our container instead of us stepping into it as a container and learning really how to live life. Because the Dharma to me is just that, it's life. But we're trying to use it as a technique, as a means to order and control our life. And that's, it's the opposite of what the Dharma really reveals to us if we're willing, if we're courageous enough to really look. And so he says, like, this whole binding that we have is due to us wanting to order and to fix and to make our lives secure in a certain way. And if we do this, then we think we're happy with our life. And if it's not working that way, we're not happy with our life. And so that's how we know when we're trying to fit something into our container instead of us releasing ourselves and stepping in to this great unknown way that is different from our known ways. And so in this manner, I think of the Dharma as something that must be known by heart, not by head. And we're used to going to our memory bank to instruct us in how to handle the moment. We're used to going there to get our instruction, how to apply something, how to even be with this saying even. We go there for our information, our takeaway. But he's asking us not, and when I say he now, I'm speaking of all the wisdom teachers. There's a saying that all Buddhists are of one mind. All Buddhists have, the same mind. So now I'm speaking of any wisdom teacher, any Buddha, any Bodhisattva who has perfection of wisdom. And so all of this is teaching us in a way how to move beyond our sense of self-importance and find a way of being in life in an unattached way, how to stop creating continually these different identities and identifications. And the things I was thinking about this week, because we're going into our third year of COVID now, And this is a big compound. And it takes a lot to maintain it. It takes a lot to pay for it. 3 years going now, and I'm thinking hardwood. Why should I be thinking hardwood? Hardwood is a place. It's just a place, you know. And I'm wondering, have I gotten attached? Or was I would always say I'm not attached to it. I could be with it or not be with it. And that's true, I can. But the thought of surrendering it, what people will think if I surrender it, does loom in my mind. The thought of saying I can't hold it, it doesn't even make sense to hold it and to pay for it. 3 years going. I mean, not unless everybody's paying to keep it here. But out of every 100 people, only one is, then it just becomes something that's unnecessary, and all the time is spent maintaining and holding and paying for something that's not even really useful at this time. It was useful for the time that we had it. It was useful for the things that we did, but we're not doing those things now. Don't even know when we'll get back to it in this climate. So it requires a different kind of thought. But if I'm thinking hardwood is mine, hardwood is ours, hardwood represents this, hardwood looks like this, hardwood, then we've slidden off of the reality of what it is. And there is some attachment, even if you don't feel it like personally. You see what I'm saying? And so this is how we have to be willing to face things and look at things without any sense of loss at all, because it's just a place empty. That's it. And so all of these wonderful notes I get about hardwood and how much, everybody loves hardwood and can't wait to get back. We'll see about that. We'll see. We have to really look at things honestly and without attachment. And when you can do that, there's really no suffering. It's just cause and condition. And one can bravely face the current moment. So this is where our commitment comes in. The power of commitment is around the truth of the Dharma. It's not around the things that we develop or the things that we make or the ways that we present ourselves in front of people. But it's an unbridled, unbiased commitment to the Dharma itself. And if we can capture the essence of this kind of commitment, then we will be suffering free. That's the promise of those who fully stepped into it. And even when we dip our toe into it, Sister Nidana called me the other day. She said, "You came up to Hardwood. I didn't know that you were here. And so I didn't get to see you. And then my feelings were hurt, that you didn't let me know that you were here." She said, "But I had this revelation, and that I was just hurting my own feelings, and that didn't make any sense." And I said, "No, it sure didn't. I'm not going to knock on your door and say, 'Hello, I'm here.' But if you come out your room and you see me, then we have a chance, to be together. But I'm not going to go and knock on everybody's door and say, 'Hello, I'm here.' Come out your room and see, But it was nothing meant to exclude her from anything. And she said, "I realized that." So I don't know where that thought came from. She said, and I just put that away, and I'm so content. She said, "I'm in my room like I'm in a dorm, and I'm just studying my Dharma, and she said, and I'm just as happy as could be." And so these thoughts come to us, you see. They're not even of our own making. We say they are, but they actually come to us. And that's how we can know they're not ours. Any thought that you have, look and see if it's really yours. Didn't it come to you? And so it comes based on something, based on our perceptions and how we have memorized and categorized and filed those things away. And I tell you, that's not reliable. So we have to question everything, everything. And when we can do that without fear, then there's nothing that this world can do to us. But also, there's no way that it can withhold the absolute joy of the human life. There's something that was said about the human life. The Buddha showed us that the human life was ideal with just the right balance of pleasure and pain. And said the point is not to squander this good fortune. Now, usually we talk about samsara is suffering, samsara is suffering, samsara is suffering. You know, and there is a point to really being able to look and clearly see that the suffering is there, that there is suffering. You know, but he goes on to say that it has a cause, it has a reason, there's a beginning for it. And it can have an ending, and there is a way towards ending it. And I'm going to show you that way. You know, so it's not so much about the suffering of samsara, but that the preciousness of this human life, you know, so that we are in a place where we have the right balance of pleasure and pain, or good fortune and not good fortune, so that we can use this as a catalyst for our ultimate it's the very, we have to get here. It's the very thing, you know, that gets us off the wheel of samsara. So human birth is very precious, you know. And so it tells us to not blow this window of opportunity. Goodness, I'm 71 already. It seemed like just 10 years ago, I was 41. And something happened. I did something last December, that's December of 2020. But it seemed like I just did it December 2021. Time is clipping by so fast. You know? You see people that you care for having changes in their health. And even though some things may be bad, we can still see that we have excellent circumstances. I've been watching some kind of show. It's like I've watched eight episodes. Actually, I watched 8 episodes yesterday. I'll just tell the truth about it. But the first episode I wanted to watch because it was about what's that green vegetable with the bumpy skin?
Oh, avocado?
Avocado. It was about avocado. It says you should know the story behind avocado. You know, and talk about how over the last, decade, how Westerners have fallen in love with the avocado, which fuels the growth of it, and how the cartels have taken over it. All the stuff that's happening with the avocados. And I was like, I didn't know this about avocados, and how they have slave labor, child labor, the avocados, and how the farmers make $1 a day. And because that labor is so cheap, they won't even invest, the industry doesn't invest in mechanical means to harvest, because you can't get any cheaper than $1 a day for 8 or 10 hours of labor, and it's human labor. It was just so disheartening. But I watched it, You know, because the show said you should know where your food comes, how it gets to you. And all I could think about is that we've got avocados all year round, you know, but at what cost? And then from that, it was water. And then I watched the whole shebang on water. And from that, it was chocolate. And I watched the whole thing on chocolate. All of it is around greed and around, you know, slave labor and child labor. And I could see for an instant how insulated I am from the suffering in the world. Oh yeah, fly over to India and take $10,000, you know, and spend it in 2 or 3 villages. 10,000 doesn't go far here, but over there it's a bajillion dollars, okay? Because I think it's 66 to 1 and it's something. So do the math, it's a gajillion dollars. They think like you're rich, you have to make sure you don't get kidnapped when you're over there helping because it's such a large amount of money. But you like fly in, land, stay in a hotel, right? Because that's so safe to stay in the villages. And you go to the village every day, but you leave by dark, you know, and you hold people's hands and you hug people and you give a few trinkets and you buy a few things and you go home feeling like, oh, what a successful trip. Bodhisattvas we are. And think we're doing so much, but not really tapping into the deep pain, the deep suffering, the deep sorrow, and not fostering like the deep, deep gratitude that, you know, that could be me born there. That could be my life. And it's not something that you just fly in and do a few good things for, and then come back home to our comfort. But having a deeper sense of the sorrow and the suffering of people from the time they're born until the time they die. And thinking, if I have this precious life that I have here, what should I render for all of its benefits? How much do I really need for myself? And it causes you to take stock of what you actually find pleasure in. And how much pleasure we find in excess. And this Bodhisattva path is about tapping in to the true condition of the world in that way. And it will change you. No matter what you're doing now, how much you're doing now, it will change you. Ones who are not doing anything will start doing something. Ones who are doing a little will do more. Ones who are doing more will do a lot. Just to relieve humans. But not just only to relieve humans, physical suffering. We're cultivating a mind and a heart and a compassion for them to be free from the suffering of samsara, the rounds of rebirth. And of course, having this desire for them to be free, if it's not known by oneself, what kind of desire is it? Not based on direct experience. So one has to have a desire for oneself to be. One has to clearly see the suffering. So when we're doing the Sambhul, the first part of the supreme and unsurpassable Mahamudra of liberation, and we're being asked, you know, to consider the preciousness of human life. And to consider that, any day, any moment, one can die. But right now, we have the availability of teachers and teaching. And we have some inclination, to study, to cultivate, develop ourselves, and to meditate. And to remember that most of us will become more distracted by worldly pursuits than realizing that we will seize this moment now to develop ourselves and to help save the world. No, we'll get caught up in things. We'll get caught up in not so good things, worldly things. We can also get caught up in spiritual things, giving them more value than they deserve. I'm sitting here thinking, of what I could have done with 5 years of hardwood research. Because everybody wants to have their own bedroom and their own private bath when they come to retreat. I'm just really thinking, I'm just saying. So sometimes we get caught up in these things. We get caught up even in good projects. I'm not saying not a good project. I'm saying, I'm speaking to the get caught up in part. That's what I'm speaking. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And then what was meant to be a tool becomes the project. That's just the way our mind works. That's just the way we attach to things. So I'm feeling called to freedom. Some things that I have to do now, I used to do from the time I was a child. I would like to sneak off to the Baptist. We had a Baptist home for indigent seniors. And so those people didn't have insurance or, much insurance. So you can imagine what kind of care homes those were, right? And I used to sneak and go there. My mother didn't want me to do things like that, but I had a propensity towards it. And I found great joy in going there and washing the people's feet. Their feet would be all crusty and just dirty and crippled up. And I mean, they had no time. They didn't even have that much staff. And, but it was something that I could do as a teenager, and it brought such joy to the people, and now I'm doing a lot of home health care right now. And I'm thinking, over the years, I stopped doing and I started, delegating wasn't the word I was looking for, but it's something like that. I'm seeing to it that this gets done, but I'm not the one who's doing it. And in that process, I lost something. I'll see to that you have it, I'll send somebody over to take care of it, and because I really want it done for you. But there's been something about having to do it myself that has really put me in touch with it in a very, very different way. I remember I built a home for the developmentally disabled children. And I started in my house. And then I rented a bigger house, like an 8-bedroom house. And then I applied for a grant and I got this 202 Section 8. Now, the thing about it, which gave me like an apartment building that we had to rehab, and then we were outfitting it for handicapped children and all that, and it became this wonderful program. But in the process, once I became the director of the program, I was prohibited by the government contract from directly interacting with the children. So the very thing that I undertook because of my compassion for the children and wanting to be there with them, I was prevented from engaging with them because they call that a conflict of interest. You know, I had to run the program. I could not engage with them in a certain way. And when we opened up the our home to the homeless youth here, we started coming up against the same thing. So it's either you're gonna run the program, you know, or you're gonna interact with the kids. You can't do both. I'm like, why not? That's what parents do with their children. You know, they run the program and they interact with their children. They you know, they run the house. I mean, why not? And this as well, it you know, it creates legal issues, and there's boundaries, whatever all y'all help people come up with these boundaries, you know, and I didn't get a lot of funding I could have gotten if I'd been willing to step out of interacting with students. I had to choose whether I wanted to interact with them, whether I thought there was something, some way I could relate to them and teach them how to do things that would shift their hearts and shift their minds, or whether I wanted to run the program. And so I can relate to a lot of what Shantideva is saying in this, and how important it is to cultivate a certain attitude that leads the mind instead of the mind leading, and we follow it with an attitude towards what's rational, what's pragmatic in that kind of way, because rationality and pragmatism really relate more to the ego and the protection and the serving of the I. And so just thinking today, and for the whole time of this book study, I want you to think that, remembering that the Buddha assured us that the human birth is ideal and that it is very precious, and that we should seize the essence of it. The next thing I wanted to remind us about was, as Shantideva, and I'm going to read some of these in case you missed them, and if so, I encourage you to go back and read Developing a Clear Intention. As Shantideva praises the benefits of as Shantideva points out, although we long to free ourselves from misery, it is misery itself that we follow and pursue. We may assume we do crazy things intentionally, but in truth, these actions aren't always volitional. Our conditioning is sometimes so deep that we cause harm without even realizing. We long for joy and do the very things that destroy our peace of mind. Again and again, we unwittingly make matters worse. If we're going to help people get free, we have to work compassionately with our own tendencies. So some of us work with others to keep from doing work on ourselves, right? We know that, yeah. But some of us don't really realize that, we can start taking so much responsibility for ourselves that we bypass the truth that some things we do, we didn't really do it intentionally. Some things we don't want to acknowledge we did it intentionally. We thought about that thing before we did it. Just like the other day when I was reading a letter that came to me. And the more I read the letter out loud to you all, the angrier I got, because this woman was like just blowing smoke and, you know, they call it like peeing on you and telling you that it's rain. Yeah, so that's what she was giving me. And I just got angry again. And I decided that I was gonna say something. And sister said, yeah, you should have seen that look you just gave me, like, and yes, I said it, you know, but I thought about that thing. So I thank you for that, because I thought about it all day and all night and all the next day. And I'm like, that wasn't a good example, because that's exactly how I felt. She hit the nail on the head. Yes, I said it, you know, and that so goes against actually what I'm trying to cultivate, you know. And so he was saying that sometimes our conditioning is so deep that we cause harm without realizing it. But now that I realized, I just decided to go with it for the minute. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to let it go in about 5 minutes, but just for 4 minutes, I'm gonna hold this thing. But it's like bringing a kind of pain upon oneself that makes for the crazy, really, right? I remember someone was saying that how she angsts over things and she thinks about things and her thoughts are not good thoughts and they just make her more anxious, and yet she just keeps on thinking about them. And so a lot of the techniques we have are designed to help uproot that in us. So for the one who's thinking inside, yeah, I said it and yeah, I meant it, even though it's a wrong thought, one needs to like call that out. One needs to be, you know, like recognizing that. One needs to actually feel ashamed about it. I do, you know, I mean, that's the only way you're gonna uproot that, you know. Now, it's true if that person called me in the next minute and said, I'm in terrible shape and I need so-and-so, I said, I'll be right there, because I can flip just like that. I can go right there. But you see, the more the mind doesn't go into certain areas, the more distance you have to go further in your boundless altruism, you see. So we need to step off from the place that we are. We have to leave home. We have to step off from the place we are. We can't like just send it out. I used to like to play the bat and ball. I was really, really good at it. When you're not good at it, you wrap the part that stretches, the whatever you call it, you wrap it around so you can bat like this. But when you got really good, you can unwrap it and you can bat, and that ball would fly way up and come back and you could hit it. So something like that. We have to step from the place we are further towards our goal so that our good works can extend further out. We can't stay in this place and try to manage everything from this place. We are not gonna advance. We have to step out of where we are, you know, by hook or by crook, by confession. And that's why they say that confession is so important, because it brings a certain humility that is a power that allows us to reach our goal. So we think so much of shame being shamed, but humility is not shame. Humility is truly a power that allows us to advance. And he says, but who will fill with bliss all beings destitute of joy, who cut all pain and suffering away from those weighted down with misery? So I'm thinking, I'm mad with her, but if she needed something, she could call me. And of course, I'll take care of it. And how inconsistent and incongruent these two thoughts are. So it says, but those who fill with bliss, who become full of joy. That's what that means. Who fill with bliss, who become full of joy. And who fill all beings who are destitute of joy. That means now, how can I fill her with the kind of joy that makes her not have to do the things she does, not have to say the things that she says? How could I help fill her? That should be my question, rather than, can you believe she said so-and-so? My question should be, how can I help that one destitute of joy be filled with bliss? That should be my question. And so in this way, they teach us the things that we should murmur to ourselves, that we should put into our minds, so that when we are confronted with that offhanded action, what rises up is not, I know she didn't say that, but what rises up is, how can I fill that one destitute of joy with bliss? That should be the question. And you can't ask that question if you don't have bliss yourself. Right? So first we have to work at hunting out, finding, and taking up with bliss, with happiness, with joy. And that comes through really seeing the preciousness of our human life, no matter what might be going on with it. And instead of focusing so much on what's not right, look at what is right. And I'm going to tell you where this takes us. It takes us towards the perfection of the qualities of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, because we start to assume, start to take on their kind of mind. And you can't do that if you don't have that kind of mind. So it's not really a matter of us not making excuses for ourselves, but just looking and seeing there's no need for excuses. When there's no need for excuses, then we're free. We not only won't make excuses, but we won't feel like we're miserable wretches, good for nothing. We can just clearly see that we have a desire to do better than that. And we also have the capacity. It'd be terrible to have the desire, but not the capacity. But it's wonderful to know we have the desire. Oh my, look at the time and the capacity. And I'm only on paperclip number 3. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more to go. So we're not going to get through all of this. But I'm talking about something that we have to develop within ourselves in order to approach and to stay on the Bodhisattva path. And this doesn't have as much to do with learning things as it does with developing and cultivating a certain kind of heart. So one thing, if you remember in developing a clear intention, it reminds us that even feeding, giving just once a single meal to others, feeding them for only a half a day, such a one is honored by the world as virtuous. And it said that the Bodhisattvas look at the things that we do, and those things have great value. So that's the mind we should have when we see someone do something. The least that they do, we should see it and give it a place of great value. that's a different way of thinking. It will make us not only appreciate things more, but appreciate others more. And we ourselves, if we are thinking that way towards others, will begin to think that way about ourselves. And all of these feelings of that we have of insufficiency and, you know, self-reproach, all of that would be uprooted. So in a way, not thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought to think, and at the same time, not disparaging ourselves. How we find that right balance. And if we start thinking in this way about bodhicitta, the awakened mind, you know, the mind that is awake, then we start to hold it in a different kind of way. So even when we think that people will fail you, right? Yes. People will fail you. I will fail me. I will fail you. But when we start thinking about bodhicitta, we start to see it as being infallible. So when I take it up, or when you take it up, there is that part in you now that is infallible. And that's the greatness of truly understanding bodhicitta, the power of bodhicitta to transform anybody. So then that one that you know, yes, they are in error, it's fruitless to get angry, but it's powerful to direct the bodhicitta towards them. Oh, Mara doesn't have a chance then. Mara doesn't have a chance to come after you or to come after you. Just directing the bodhicitta towards them. When one has sufficiently aroused bodhicitta, then it becomes yours to free you. And the world will not be able to prevail. That is the hope that one has continued who develops bodhicitta. They become the source of happiness for their enemies. It says, and as a result of our compassionate intentions, even our enemies can be liberated from self-absorption and start creating the pathway to attain enlightenment. You can say to yourself, may the rage I feel towards this person cause both of us to be liberated. Instead of like, oh no, she didn't say that. May the rage that I feel towards this person cause both of us to be liberated. How sweet and how wonderful. We can have this aspiration of letting go. And even if we don't genuinely feel it, that's the thing. That's why we're doing this kind of cultivation that requires a visualization and a concentration around that visualization. And someone asked me a question, and I'm going to answer that email. I've just been thinking of the best way to answer that email. But even when, you know, we're given certain things to contemplate, right? And to keep contemplating them until we're in a deep concentration, like singly focused on them, until they become not a visualization or something we're thinking about, but they take on an aspect of being real to us. So much so that we feel it in the laboratory, in the body. And that's the practice. So if you come out of this and right away your mind flips to curiosities you have about other things, that's not that. Then you know that that's your mind moving away from something it's gotten bored with, or that you have strayed from the whole purpose of the practice. When one gets up from that practice, one should be totally focused around what they have been peering deeper and deeper into, instead of flipping off to somewhere in the worlds and the moons and all of this. You know, so when you end your meditation, what's on your mind? How do you get up from that spot and take that with you? Because you become so concentrated that that has become you. That kind of compassion. And then you know whether you're doing your work or not. You know, you have to write and ask me. You know. But that's how our minds are. That's how tricky our minds are. You know, we have these great revelations and we got these flashes and our mind went to this and this and this. After we spent all of that time just trying to bring the mind right there. When our time was up, it went off. It flew off. But you should get up from that place, bringing that mind with you and using it in your daily interaction for the whole rest of the day, whole rest of the week, for days after. That's how we will shift and how we will change. So I guess I should end because it's over. I definitely should end. I thank you all for staying over today. And I hope that you're appreciating this study, but you know, it's gotta be more than a study, right? We have to actually be doing all of these things that we're reading about, we're trying, we're putting them into practice. We're finding out that all of these things that we're reaching for and that we want to cultivate, actually the seeds are already there. All we have to do is scratch them and water them, and they will come. Please be well, happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you, no danger. May you always be able to inevitable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Venerable Panawari, and hear you. Thank you so much.